Hello, hello. Hi, everyone. I'm Li Hau. From sorry, I'm a bit nervous, and after like two amazing talks, like finally it's my turn. Uh, so, and I'll be sharing with you guys about introduction to Svelte. I think it's not very comparable with what we've learned so far. We learned about like meta frameworks, like frameworks that you build to build like applications. But like Svelte is more like a like libraries that like it's also frameworks, but it's not like a meta framework kind of thing. But yeah, I not really sure what I'm talking about right now. Sorry, it's just a bit nervous, but yes, here we're gonna talk about introduction to Svelte. So, first of all, let me introduce myself. I'm Li Hao. I probably, yeah, we have done that. Sorry, hold on, let me find my notes. Okay. So, let's see. Oops. Yep. A little bit about myself. I'm Li Hao. I'm a front engineer at Shopee. I think, yeah, we learn about that. If you want to follow me, I have my Twitter account. Or I'm actually starting to make some YouTube videos about Svelte and like front end stuff. Yeah, so you can follow me if you're interested. Anyway, so what is Svelte? I think probably most of you like you've heard it mentioned about it in the previous talks. So me personally, I I I didn't know until I prepared the slides. I just realized that Svelte has been around since 2016, and it was the recent release, like the version 3, Svelte 3, that was released in 2019. Wasn't that really not that recent? It's been like I guess 2 years. It was like Svelte 3 that was that go. It was this talk by Rich Harris, which is the creator of Svelte, about rethinking reactivity. And I watched his talk and I realized that hey, this is really cool. It's really different from what we've learned about so far. It's about rethinking about how frameworks can do a lot of stuff during the compile time. Basically, when you write the code before like you write the code in a way that the compiler can optimize your code such that the user can get less JavaScript when they load your website. And I found it so interesting that I started to figure out fiddling with Svelte, and that's how I learned about Svelte as well. And today I want to share that with you, right? So what we're going to talk about today is we probably will have a quick introduction about Svelte. Basically, mainly about walking through with you like how a Svelte component would look like, um, and then um, and in the end, I probably will give you a little bit of share with you a bit on like how you can actually get started with Svelte, Svelte Kit, which is a meta framework for you to build Svelte even faster, right? So let's see. So first of all, um, when you write Svelte, you create a file called app.svelte. Well, I didn't really prepare. I didn't really dare to do live coding, but here is like live copy pasting going to be. So first of all, what you have is what you see here is when you have a Svelte component. So Svelte is actually a component-based framework, right? So you have you can use like components, right? Like just like any other frameworks out there. And in Svelte, you name your component with a file ends with .svelte. And here we have this file called app.svelte. And that will be our component, which is the app component for Svelte. And in here, you see the syntax, it looks like HTML, right? So basically, you can write any HTML syntax within Svelte. Most of them will just work well because Svelte syntax is like a superset of HTML, right? So it is like HTML plus like expressions and some of the cool stuff, right? So here I have this REPL. So here I am in this svelte.dev/REPL, and you can come over here as well. So you can visit this. And here you will see, you'll find a REPL where you can play around with like Svelte. So here already have the Svelte component, right? So I can actually change this to like say buy, and now you see like this is what your Svelte component will look like. So let's see. So the first thing about Svelte is that here you see HTML, right? The next thing is that we can add styles to this component, right? So here I create a style tag, and immediately you can see now my the H1, the heading one now is in purple color, right? Rebecca purple. And what cool about this is that when you have a style that looks like um, this style only affects the H1 that is within this file, right? Meaning, if you add this, it does not affect all the H1 text that you return in other components on other files or in other places. So there is some sort of a scoping for your CSS where what you write over here, the CSS you write over here, only scoped within this file. Next is when you have components, you want to have data, and then you want to present data within your component, right? So what you can do here is you can create a script tag and you can define your data over here, right? So this looks like JavaScript, and it is JavaScript. So you can have JavaScript over here, and to use the data, like say the variable that I just defined over here, like the name, I can use curly bracket as expressions. So here I would do a curly bracket and name. And now you can see that I'm using this variable. Well, it's still the same, right? So I probably can change to hero story block. And now you see that I'm using the data that's coming from this script tag. So it's quite easy to define variables and use it over here in your HTML. So clearly you can see now this whole code is split into 3 sections. However you like to order it, it's up to you. I can have script tag over here, or style elements on top. It's really up to you. So one thing you just need to take note is that you can only have one script text in the top level, one style tag in the top level, right? So if you have multiple of this, then you get error, and it says that you can only have one script element. So the next thing I'm going to show you is that how you can use component, right? As I said, Svelte is a component-based library. So framework, then I can create more files over here, right? So I can create a component like this. And I'm going to have this H1 tag in here as well. So this is by. And I'm going to use it I'm going to import it, right? So I'm going to import my component. Oh, I think let me just copy paste. It's faster. The import component from component.svelte. So one thing you do take note is that this is a default import, right? So when you have a Svelte component with a .svelte file, this exports a default export would be this component itself. So you can import the default import from here, and you can use this component in your HTML, right? So you can have component like this. And you do notice that although I have a H1 within this component, but it's like in the default color, the initial color, the black color, right? So styles over here um, does not affect other uh, elements outside, right? And it does not just works with tags; it works with class names and all those things as well, right? So if I have a class, say maybe like foo, and I'm gonna have the same class over here as well, then I can come over here and change foo to be purple, and okay, just make sure that I do really change it, right? This class will only applies to the full class within this component, within this file itself. It does not apply to any other foo that's outside of this file. Right? Of course, sometimes you wanna maybe like uh, uh, catch you want to you want to have some exceptions, then probably you can use a global selector, and now it affects both it affects like the full class globally. Okay, so that's it. We have in components, we have styles data, right? So whoops, let's see. I think we covered all this. And next thing is we're gonna add event listeners, right? What's good about front end frameworks when you can't click on a button and you can't interact with it, right? So let's create a counter. I think we all love counters. We just like to click on a counter and increment them. So let me paste this in and let me create a button. Let me paste in a button as well. So when you have a console over here, and when you try to click on the um, button, you'll notice that you see a console out. So right. So here, what I've done is that I have my button and I add a on directive on with a colon sign and the event's name. Right. And over here, I use the curly brackets. Right. So curly brackets is for JavaScript. So any JavaScript expressions over here works. Right. So you can have a functions, you can have inline functions, um, they works as well. So yeah, any JavaScript syntax within the curly brackets works, right? So here, the name of the events itself can be any names, right? So any JavaScript events, right? So you have on click, then you can add click event. If you want to have a mouse down events, then on mouse down. So just any names that HTML supports will be available for you over here. So so to so now we can click the button, but what how useful is this if we can't increment, right? If we can't count up or count down, right? So what you can do to count up and down is you want to change the variable, right? You want to change this count to +1, right? And in JavaScript, the way you do it is you say count plus plus, or you want to count plus equals to 1, and so that you can increment the count variable, right? And that's it. That's all you need to do. So here, if you see, if I click this, whoops, hold on. I think I need to change it back to on click button. So over here, if I click this, you see immediately the count variable has incremented by 1, and this value click count has incremented by 1, right? So if I click a few times, you can see this numbers keeps going, and that's it. That's the beauty of Svelte. When you want to change variable the states, you just change it like a normal variable and how you would do it in JavaScript, and the Svelte framework will handle it for you. So let's so how does that works, right? So Svelte is a compile based framework, and all this happens in the Svelte compiler, and it tries to figure out all the things that you need in order to bring this reactivity to your components. Um, and if you take a look over here on the right, which is like the demo in this REPL, you see a few tabs, right? You see the results, you see a JavaScript output and CSS outputs, right? So if you click into the JavaScript output, this is the code that when you write this is the code that's generated by Svelte to build this. So all the code that you write is generated in over here, right? So this is the compile code, and this is the code that is being loaded by your browser, by the users, right? So if we try to scroll and try to find where all this happens, right? If you go to on click button, maybe kind of search for it, probably find something around here, right? So uh, first of all, you see that this file is not that long, right? It's 69 lines long, and that's all your user will receive. Okay. Of course, it also imports some of the internals. Those are like utility functions, right? So, for example, if you guys come over here when you see I have a button, then this is my document.create element for the button element, and because I don't want to repeat writing like document.create elements, here you can see that I use the element function to just simplify that. Yep. So now if I come over here and try to find my on click button, and you find this function, right? So most of the code that you write over here on your left are mostly copy pasted to the right, right? So except that there's this little magic of invalidates that's happening within Svelte, right? So what happens is that Svelte will actually analyze your code and figure out whether is there any reactivity within your code, right? If I don't do this, then you see that it just counts and the function. But as soon as I add this, then you see that it notice that I'm modifying count and it adds this invalidates around this modification, right? And what it does is that it will analyze all the variables and notice that what variables that is being what variables are will be changed and where you will change the variable, and you will wrap this around with this invalidate so that it tells the Svelte framework that in runtime when you make changes to count, it also tries to update all the elements that is using this count variable. And you can see that in this function over here where it says that um, you probably don't understand all this code, but let me translate it roughly. It means like if it's something is dirty, like some variable has changed, then try to update this element. And this text element is the elements that we just created over here, right? So all this happens, all the changes that you make, Svelte tries to figure out and analyze them and generates um, like a like a very precise operations to just do the changes to modify the DOM directly for you, right? And all this is included over the code over here that you can read and you can, and it's very small that being received by the users. So there's no virtual DOM like comparing like what you render out and then figure out where the changes has been made and try to update and reflect it. All changes in Svelte I'm sorry, unlike other frameworks. And but in Svelte, what happens is that as soon as you make changes, you will record what has changed, and then it will notify. We will have the code to modify them, right? And if you don't make any changes, you'll notice that the code that you just saw to modify this count is just disappear because Svelte knows that although it's using counts, but you are not modifying. You will not modify count in the entire lifetime of this component, so you don't even need the code for it, right? So Svelte optimize code like this so that the user gets the smallest code as much as possible. Yeah, so that's about the JavaScript part, and let's come back to Svelte. Well, there's a lot of features in Svelte that I'm not sure whether I can cover all of them, but I will try to do my best to showcase some of those um, use useful things that you probably uh, uh, use the most in all frameworks and give you a sense of like how writing in Svelte feels like, right? So first thing is let me clean this up a bit with like say here. So just now when you see this, right? Before I change something, you see that there's this unused CSS selector, right? This is also another very cool thing about Svelte is that it also analyzes your elements and CSS, and you realize that because this is a local scoped CSS, right? And it only scoped to any full class within this file. And you realize that there's no elements that is using the full class, then it will tells you that you have unused CSS. And if you click and the CSS output over here, you'll notice that it does not output any CSS at all because it knows that this full class with a color red will never be used. If I change this to say button, then of course there's a button element. Then now you see the code over here, and the complaint is gone, right? So that is how amazing Svelte is. It tries to analyze your code and give you hints, give you warnings, and try to optimize and generate the smallest code as much as possible. So let's get back to like my example over here. I have a counter where I can increment and decrement, and that's like we can just keep going and that's it. That's quite boring, right? We want to have maybe a limit on how much you can increase, right? Or maybe you want to hide a button when it hits certain uh maybe hit a certain limit, right? And that is you want to conditionally add or show or hide elements based on certain condition, and you can do that with this logic blocks in Svelte. In Svelte, logic blocks, how it looks like is it will start with a curly bracket and with a hash sign over here, and then you can have your conditions like this, and you can wrap this up, and you can end, and to end the logic blocks you use the slash sign with if. So here you have your condition where we only show this button element if the count is less than 5, right? So if I click increment and once it hits 5, it's not less than 5, then yeah, your element is gone. And if you try to decrement, and there you go, right? So here is logic blocks, and let me see. Oops. Logic conditions, and you can do looping with the each block, and you can do promises where you can await promises with the await logic block, where you can say await for a promise, and then if it's loading, you have some uh, value that you want to show, and then show something else, and if it's catch, then you will show something else again, right? So there, these are like logic blocks. I think I skipped something that is very cool. I want to show you as well. So here we keep incrementing. You get increment these variables, right? But sometimes you want to have variables that is um, always a certain value of. It's always you always want to count a certain value, like say double is always 2 times of count, right? So here I'm gonna say times 2 equals to double. Right? So to make sure that this double variable keeps up to date, we have to find all the places that we write count, because initially it's initialized as 0 times 2 is 0, right? But if you want to update this every time, probably you have to come over here and say doubles equals to counts times 2. Uh, this every places that we make changes to count, so that it is always 2 times of count, right? But that will be that will be a hassle, right? So what Svelte provides is a different reactive declaration, a way to declare a variable that is always reactively updated, or is always like a formula, like it's always true, uh, and you can define it with a dollar sign and a colon. So this is in JavaScript, this is a label statement, and this is the dollar label. And when you define this, and say you can be sure that double is always 2 times of count. Whenever we change count, the double will always be updated and reflects to be to 2 times of count. So here, if I click, and you see that double will always be updated to be 2 times of count, and that's how easy you can do, and you don't have to find all the places where you change count, and it just works for you. Yeah, so let's see, and we have bindings in Svelte. You can do bindings with a bind directives, and that just works. I think I probably not sure I have enough time. And transition is so much easier to do it in Svelte. You can, if you come over here, since we after you've hit 5, this button will disappear, right? And if you want to have the elements to like fade it out easily, what you can do is you can import fade from Svelte transition, and you can add transition to this element. And now when you hit 5, it will fade away. And um that's yeah, that's how easy it is. And we try to look at fade itself. um if you try to console it out, if you look at the console, you'll notice that fade is just a function. So meaning that you can define your own transition as well. And I'm gonna paste my own transition because it's just a function. I can paste my own transition over here, and I can just define this function and I can use it directly over here. And that's how easy I can define my own thing, um, and have my own transition that does not have to be built in by Svelte. You can define your own thing. And so here it will translate why we will move down when it's gonna be removed, and there you see you can define your own transitions. So there's a lot of things that I can't really cover by today. There's just so many things that is so interesting about Svelte, like actions, where you can um, basically get the instance of your elements, and you can do basically anything about it, right? In some frameworks, it's very hard to get the reference of elements that's is being rendered by the framework itself, but in Svelte, it's very easy to do it with actions. And to sum it up, there's a lot of other features, functions that from Svelte that I couldn't cover, but I just want to show one more thing before I end this talk is in Svelte is the like the front end framework that allows you to build components, but to build applications you need more things beyond components, right? And as you see, like the talk that you saw just earlier on, you have like meta frameworks, frameworks that's above like frameworks that does a lot of things. For example, like define route things for you, like defines allows you to easily define ways to do like renderings and stuff, like server side rendering allows you easily to do a lot of this high level stuff like operations to serve an application to the user. um, we we have that. We are building that, and it's gonna be available really soon. It's still in beta, but it's gonna be out very soon. It's called SvelteKit. So it's something that we built by the Svelte team. And SvelteKit is this meta framework that allows you to. It's a very opinionated setup, but it's opinionated in a way that it follows all the modern best practices to allow you to just kickstart Svelte application as fast as you can, right? So it supports like fast development, fast rendering, all those different rendering modes that you can think of. You can already do it with Svelte, but you have to figure out how to set this up. But SvelteKit does that for you, and there's a lot of optimizations such as offline support, prefetching, service workers, and many more, right? So yeah, that's about circuit. And so to get started with circuit, you can, I probably not gonna share this, but so what's next about Svelte and Svelte kits, right? So all these things, all the resources you can find it on the Svelte official website, which is svelte.dev, and slash you can get tutorial, Ripple, and chat for our Discords. Amazing people in the Discord community. Just join in, ask questions. They are here to help. And yeah, and as well as maybe my personal plug, some of my tutorials about Svelte that I've made, like play YouTube. I've like made like recorded a YouTube playlist for Svelte tutorial for beginners. If you click into it, I think it has like 80 over videos, each covering one small topic. Yeah. As well as I started to make videos about Svelte as well. So yeah, that's like my personal plug, and that's it for a quick introduction of Svelte and Svelte Kit.